This is the Nassaman Hockey Podcast with James Nichols and John Zella.
Welcome back to the Nassaman Hockey Podcast. I'm John Zella, as always, with James Nichols of the fourth period. Man, I missed the intro song. Feels like a long time since we've been back behind the mic.
Yeah.
How was your little holiday away from NHP?
It was nice. It was smaller this year with the way of the world at the moment. But it was nice. I got some relaxation in, much needed, and looking forward to another extended weekend this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Because the holiday, so that'll be nice. How was yours?
It was nice. I wish I was supposed to be spending a little bit more time on Long Island, and I had tickets to go to that Capitals game on the 23rd, and things kind of went awry, and then it was fine. So other than the game postponement, I was bummed to not be on Long Island for Christmas.
Sure.
It's been a long time, and I kind of just like being there. I love it, but I'm not in love with it. Doesn't mean I don't want to be there all the time. And I don't know. I sit in traffic for like 5 minutes. I'm like, get me off this sandbar immediately. I just can't deal with it. It's sometimes it's too much. But I miss, like, luckily I was there a few weeks ago for a wedding for a weekend, so I got my bacon, egg, and cheese and all those other goodies. But oh my god, I meant to share this with you earlier when we were talking to we were on the phone with the rest of the group there.
Sure.
And maybe listener, maybe you know this, and maybe it's like super niche. I thought everybody on Long Island knew this. Do you know what Zorn's is? Like the chicken spot where you're like Staten Island. Yeah,
but I do know
the
Zorn's.
Barbecue. So I don't even know when I told my mom this, but I was like, you know what I would love for Christmas? It was one of those. Like, she's like, well, what do you want? I was like, you know what I would love? I need that barbecue sauce. I need that Zorn's barbecue sauce, right? So my brother was down, hands me this heavy box. I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, oh, I don't know. It's from mom, whatever. So I opened this box with a bag in it, and it's like jars of this barbecue sauce.
Yeah,
dude, I'm stoked. I don't even
know
what
I need to do with that bad boy.
I don't even know. I need something fun.
You need like a smoker now. Like you got.
I know. I just like like how much money you just cost me. Like all this, I'm gonna have to I don't even know. I never even cooked a brisket.
Your latest Amazon search has a smoker in it. I know.
I did not get enough money in Amazon gift cards to offset all of this. I don't really I do eat meat, just not a lot, and I don't cook it anymore. So I'm like, I need to be creative. I'm sure that I can.
You can do I forget what it is. That fruit they sell it at Trader Joe's. That's it, jackfruit. You can make.
I do have some
pulled pork, quote unquote, sandwiches.
I do have that in my
there you
cupboard.
Go. You're welcome.
I might do it, but I opened it while we were on the phone. I turned my camera off, and I took a sniff out of the jar.
And a little taste.
Did I? No, I didn't.
You liar.
No, I didn't. Because I was trying to eat my dinner because we are just back to back tonight with a whole bunch of stuff. But I haven't had it in so long that I'm very excited because I don't get out to Bethpage when I'm there. It's not like it's in stores. Like in Syracuse, Dinosaur Barbecue. If any listeners that travel here, or Rochester, it's actually one in New York City too. They sell anything Syracuse that's made here is in every Wegmans, every grocery store. I don't know that Zorn's is in a Stop and Shop or something. So I don't even know where I think you have to go to Zorn's to get it.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know. I was just very excited to get it. And it was a very Long Island thing that only people that are from there would understand. Or maybe not even everybody. Maybe not even. Maybe I just introduced you to Zorn's. I'm going to call them and send them an invoice for this free ad.
Checks in the mail, John. Checks in the mail.
All right. Anyway, a lot to discuss.
Yeah.
We had a delay last week, and things were changing, and we had a delay this week, and things more postponements and all this stuff. We're excited. Later in the episode, we interviewed Kevin Kurz, and we'll bring you that a little bit later. Super nice guy. I was happy to talk some Islanders. It fit right in with the flannel. It was fantastic. So it was really good. So we're happy to finally bring you that interview. We've been working on it for a while. He was moving, and life happened. Life happened to us. I wasn't around. It was a whole thing. A little Joe Bentorno friend, contributor to the show, was at the ready. Very happy about that.
Yep.
So to get us back into the hockey groove, we're going to continue ripping off 32 thoughts,
32 now.
word association, to get the juices flowing again. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
The postponements.
I've had enough. Can I
Wow.
leave it at that? I've had enough. It's so much to keep up with, and listen, I get it from one side, from the other side. I'm happy that they did what they did today regarding the new policy of asymptomatic players, and they come back a little bit earlier
with a test.
With the test, correct.
And my question is, and maybe you can explain this because I wanted to tweet it, but I thought people would just like yell at me. When is it? When do the 5 days start from the positive test? That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
for example, Zach Parise, Anthony Beauvillier, Cal Clutterbuck, and Oliver Wahlstrom on the 26th were placed on were tested positive and placed on COVID protocol. They will be able to return after their 5-day quarantine. So essentially the 6th day from the 26th, which is Saturday, they can return.
So in my head, for some reason, and maybe it makes sense, but isn't what is happening, that it was 5 days from the negative test. Because what they were saying was that the CDC guidelines anyway, were saying that after the 5 days, they don't need to quarantine, but they need to wear masks. So that got me thinking, okay, is it 5 days from the first negative test? Or so no. I wanted to ask that question.
It is 5 days after. If you test negative after 5 days, good to go.
Oh, so it's all right. The first test, 5 days from the first, positive. Or from the positive test.
Yep,
it's 5. Okay, I just want to clear that up. I'm sure I'm not the only one who was like, because I feel like I'm crazy now because things are changing, and I'm like, I reread it. I have it up on the screen for what Elliot Friedman said. I just wanted to make sure because I'm like,
no, yeah. Even today, I was texting people at the fourth period, and I was like, listen, is it 5 days from the positive? Is it 5 days or is it really 6 days? Because that 5th day you still have to quarantine. They're like, no, yeah, it's 5 days you have to quarantine. So on that 6th day you can return.
So at 2 o'clock, because you tested positive at 2 o'clock on Monday, you're ready to go at 2 o'clock on Friday.
Correct.
Okay, just because as long as it like hits the whatever hour mark, I'm sure they'll be super specific about that, which is fair. It's very confusing because I have there's like personal feelings I have that are just like I'm nervous, and then there's like life has to go on. So I've been wrestling with that the last week or so, especially because I almost had a possible exposure that would turn out to be negative and all that. But okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
In the same vein, the Olympics.
So it's interesting that this question is being asked now, today. If we would have recorded this podcast tomorrow, I'd be like, oh, I'm so disappointed. And I'm still disappointed, but now I'm just like, oh, the CDC changed their guidelines. And although it was being played in Beijing, I wonder if it would have had any effect on the decision.
That was the scary part, I believe, was that there was a lot less control, and it was the IOC and it was all this other stuff that the NHL and the US or Canada didn't really have anything to do with.
Right. So outside of hockey, if you were tested positive in Beijing, you would have to have stayed there for 2 extra weeks. And the Edmonton Oilers don't want to lose Connor McDavid for 2 weeks if he tests positive on like the last day of the Olympics. So I understand why they didn't go because of how strict the policies are in China. However, I do know that and it was evident with Brad Marchand putting out his statement.
Right. I just added that note just to make sure we didn't with the taxi squads and how convenient it was that they did it about this, but not for the Olympics.
So it's very convenient that all that happened. It's very interesting that all that happened, and Brad Marchand says what he says, and a few more players came out and were like, we really wish we could have went. It's interesting to see how many still did want to go. I think it was like a 50-50 split. Some players were like, I don't know if I want to go. And then there were, the other half of the players like, when am I going to get to play in the Olympics again? I want to go. So
I feel bad for like
in the next 4 years, I'm really interested to see where we're going to be. But right, exactly. Like
Like,
Sidney
this is
Crosby,
this is
Alex
his last one.
Ovechkin, those
Like,
guys aren't going to be able to do it again.
yeah, and it's exciting. Like the whole point is best on best, and
Right.
my Islanders allegiance goes away, and I know I'm an American, but like Canada's still good. Like I still want to see the best teams win. Like
Yeah.
and the best players play against each other. I don't want a watered down anything. Um, for a tournament like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was disappointing. I was hoping you were going to bring up the Marchand thing because I think I put these notes together before that happened.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely really interesting. I'm happy that it gives the NHL some latitude as far as the scheduling is concerned. Not just because I have tickets to one of those games that'll most likely now be in February, but just in general, maybe the Islanders can selfishly get a little more consistency, and maybe by then, by February, we'll certainly know where they are in the standings and
Yeah.
if they can bounce back. Because then it's like a month and a half until the trade deadline because it's March 21st, I believe, this year. It's a little late,
Yeah.
so we get to we'll know a lot more by then. Um, I'm gonna skip one ahead here. World Juniors ultimately canceled today
Man,
after a bunch of um, forfeitures, which was absolutely crazy to me that they
crazy.
didn't build in time for. I mean, some of these are students in the U.S. and blah blah
Yeah.
blah, so I get it, but or around the world, they're 17 years old for the most part, 18 years old. It was surprising they didn't just build in time for postponements and more time between games so that like they didn't play the next day of the
I
tournament.
wonder
But
how possible it is, right? Because and this is an exception, but Connor Bedard is 16 years old. So does he have the time for postponements? And how much of a backseat does school take now to the World Juniors? Because again, he's just 16 years old. So like I get what you're saying, and like they should have done that. You're right. But at the same time, is it possible? I don't even know. And with
I have a
all of
similar
these things
question.
happening too, with like Omicron and how rapid it became, and the it seemingly it felt like COVID was almost gone, and then suddenly it was way back again.
Oh my
And
god, yes, super like the other
so
way.
so when things got crazy again, it was almost like everyone was just scrambling. And when this happened, when they planned the World Juniors and all that, it was probably planned like things are dying down, like we're gonna be fine, and then all of a sudden, boom, things are not okay again, and we're scrambling and trying to figure out all these protocols. And at this point, it was just like, you know what, not worth it.
Yeah,
Everybody just go home. And I'm
which
not saying that was the right thing to do. They did this with the women. They were just like, screw it, go home. It took longer for the men.
there were others. There were, I think,
Too
and
many things are getting canceled. It's unfortunate. I think today's
it's a health and
decision.
safety thing. Like,
No, you're right.
if you want the players, like, forget for a second if Connor McDavid did get it right and he comes back, you don't want him to be a shell of himself.
Right.
Or Matt Barzal. What if he was redshirted, got it, and then wasn't like didn't even play a game? That would be worse than years ago. Tavares that season was kind of lost anyway.
Yeah.
But when Tavares got hurt, that's this would feel worse, like
No, you're right.
completely preventable worse.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where there's definitely I like that Scott Mayfield said something about the women's U18s. Um, Definitely confusing. I and tough. I feel bad for all these players, the
Yeah.
ones that were canceled, and then the World Juniors that were canceled. Although no Islander players were there. Atu Ratu was supposed to be there, tested positive. Now he's back on the ice skating. It seems to be fine.
Yeah.
Um, but same thing. I'm personally worried about is the long term effects. I don't want to see that for players, right? I don't want to see Matt Barzal, who went through it. I don't think they released symptoms of anybody from the Islanders or really from any players.
No, they don't
Um,
typically.
you just hate to kind of see that later on in his career.
Yeah.
Who's someone who's like not even necessarily in his complete prime yet, suffer from this long term. But speaking of Matt Barzal, he's back.
Yeah.
Um,
Feel awful for him. He got it
yeah,
at the worst time. He was in Detroit by himself for 10 days, and he said it. He was like, it was the worst. I was alone. I was bored. You know, listen, Matt Barzal's fast on the ice. He's fast in life. He's always, he talks about he's an energetic person. He does all these things, and to just be cooped up like that, and then Trotz even had what to say about he was a little winded on the ice. Just day one still, but he was a little winded.
You hope that's just from
You hope
being
it's just
away from the rink.
yes, for 10 days. We'll see what happens. Luckily and unluckily, games were postponed, which we'll talk about. Maybe he had a little bit more time to recover, but they didn't practice the past 2 days.
Yeah,
So
it's tough. And they were supposed to be playing tonight.
canceled.
This is Wednesday as you're listening to this, or it's Wednesday as we're recording this rather. Another postponement. Fingers are crossed that Buffalo kind of goes off without a hitch. They've been kind of struggling as well.
Yeah.
But so is the rest of the league. So it's a little tough. So
happy we found Matt Barzal though.
We found him. He's back.
Missing.
He's we saw him on camera. I'd like to see a side by side of previous just to make sure the scars line up. I don't want to make sure it's a different.
He's actually a Russian spy. It's not really him.
Yeah, I don't want Bat Barzal running around. Like we need the real one. We need to make sure we got the real one. This is not. We don't need Bizarro World Bat Barzal. So
yeah.
Last question for you.
Yeah.
Palmieri, Bailey, Parise, and Bouillier have combined for 7 goals so far this season.
Okay.
How many goals does Andrew Ladd have?
I hate you. Next question. Move on.
Do you know the answer to this question?
He's got 5 goals.
He's got 5 goals. So I saw this stat. Someone tweeted it, and I wish I to give them credit, but I did see somebody tweet something similar to this. I saw it was about Ladd, like 5 goals, and I was like, I need to look at the Islanders page real quick. I was like, oh my god, how just absolutely upsetting is that? Not that like I wish Ladd was back. It just speaks to how poorly players in and out of the lineup and this whole thing. Like,
yeah. Tough. It's definitely tough. All I can see when I look at you now is just that gif of the guy stirring the huge pot of sauce.
That's me anyway. You can often find me stirring a pot of sauce. Perhaps making a batch of fresh pasta.
Yeah.
Which I did last week. It was delicious.
I'm sure it was.
So Islanders are hopefully, fingers crossed, back at it against the Sabres, followed by the Oilers for a matinee on New Year's Day.
Yep.
And the Kraken.
Yep.
I don't want to dive into these matchups. The Oilers and the Kraken don't seem to be doing very well. The Oilers are a little bit of a dip. The Sabres are the Sabres. But the Islanders have also been the Islanders as of late. Way too reminiscent of a team that many of us are familiar with from the not too distant past. However, trying to be the optimist here, do these matchups give the Islanders an opportunity to get some momentum back? It's not their full roster. I understand that, but what can they do here?
Now, with today's new guidelines, by the time they play the Sabres, will they have? By the time they play the Oilers, they will have Parise, Clutterbuck, Bouillier, and Wahlstrom back. Not Nelson.
Considering they've had a negative test by then.
Correct.
That's the earliest they can be back. So there's a possibility that they're back.
Assuming that they're negative and they can come back.
Right.
Those 4 can come back. So most of the lineup, save Nelson and Pulock, will be back, and that's good enough of a roster, I believe, for the Islanders to take 2 points that day. So, the Sabres, who are the Sabres, we know they started hot this season, but they regressed to the mean. That's 2 points that they should definitely get. The Oilers are another 2 points that they could obtain if things go right with those 4 players. And even if they don't, I think that they're still okay enough to listen. The goalies are healthy, so I think they're okay to compete, knock on wood. And then, the Kraken come to town for the first time, and that's going to be a bit of a different look. They've never played the Kraken. So that's a game where I'm interested to see how it goes because both sides haven't seen each other yet. So there's going to be a feeling out process. I can guarantee you it's going to be a slow first period, um, because that's how it usually goes when there's a filling out process for the Islanders. And then, when Jordan Eberle revisits Long Island, it could be an entertaining matchup. But
Yeah, I am looking forward. I'm looking forward to watching the games. I have to be
sure,
perfectly honest. Um, I got on my little vacation. I got the one game against Vegas in, which was great, and it was like the middle. It was a afternoon game, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken. So it was super nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to things getting back to normal. Knock on wood.
kind
I
of.
don't want to jinx anything.
Knock on wood.
Um, it did. I'll say this too before we move on, because people were pointing it out yesterday. I even saw it on ESPN. They already have their matchup with the Canucks postponed on the 5th.
So that's going to be the next thing, right? The CDC guidelines changed within the United States, and the Canada guidelines are still, they remain the same, um, and they're strict. And they might be getting stricter, depending on what happens in Canada over the next couple weeks. So yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see if the Islanders end up going on that Canada trip. I don't, who knows right now? I have no
Yeah,
idea.
or who will be available if they are
Right.
able to go, because the 10 days. Now by then,
Well, no,
I
no
think
longer
everyone's
10. It's 5.
in Canada. It's still 10.
Oh, that's right.
So that's where some of the confusion and what people
That
are
is
saying is a
right.
little unfair is Canadian teams are going to be playing shorthanded a little bit longer, whereas American teams in the United States don't have to do that. If Canadian teams travel here,
Yeah.
they're subject to the 5 days with a negative test. Um, American teams going to Canada, however, it's still 10 games.
Yeah.
So that's 10 days. Sorry, not games. Um, so that's definitely tough. That's where it gets a little complicated,
For
because you
sure.
may have guys that be able to play one day but not the next.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough.
So Brock Nelson is a good example. He may just sneak in if they play that Canucks game on the 5th.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure. So he may be eligible prior to that against the Kraken, but not against the Canucks,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he may have 5 days with a negative test instead of the 10 or whatever the case is. So that definitely does it. But I think there's some room here. There's an opportunity to get some momentum.
No,
Like,
I
actually play
definitely
these
agree.
games. It's a steep mountain. I don't think there's no understating that or
Yeah.
overstate. I
No.
think it just is what it is. Um, the Penguins are real far in front. They still have 4 or 5 games in hand on a bunch of teams. I think the most important part, not only do they need to win those games, then they need to beat the teams in front of them. They need to beat the Penguins, the Bruins, the Red Wings, Columbus. They need to make sure that not only they're winning the games, they can't fall behind. They can't be playing 3-point games
Right.
with anyone in front of them, which that almost needn't be said, but is worth pointing out that that's a really good way to leapfrog. Like, you can really make up some serious ground that
Yeah.
way too. So not
Right.
only you got to win games flat out, but lose against the Oilers, lose against the Kraken, fine. Beat those teams in front of you. You have to do that to make up
Yeah.
the ground, because it's not going to work.
Yeah. No,
It's
I mean,
already the math is already hairy, right? Like, they have to win like 35 games the rest of the way out of 55.
the 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 fact of the matter is that they're going to have to beat teams they're supposed to beat, and they're going to have to beat teams they're not supposed to beat at this point.
100%. They gotta you have to beat a Tampa Bay who was in a crazy game with Montreal last night. Um,
Yeah.
a lot of back and forth. The defense around the NHL in the 3 games or 4 games last night was terrible. I think the lowest goals against was 4
Yeah.
in any game. There was an 8-7 game. Who was that? I can't even
We and
remember.
we said this too. We'll you'll hear it later in our interview with Kevin Kurz, but that this is going to happen. Why? Because of all the postponements, the inconsistency. It's just going to be sloppy out there. It's like the beginning of a season.
Yeah. So it'll be, and it's going to keep doing that as a game here or there gets postponed. There's maybe the possibility of a week break in February
Yeah.
for all teams, and then there's an All-Star break. So it doesn't get any smoother, but at least, as I mentioned with Kevin, that you'll hear later, at least everyone's in the same boat now. A couple weeks ago, it wasn't really quite everybody. Now it's really everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting back up to speed. The Flames haven't played in like a month. I think their first game was maybe tonight as we speak. If they're even playing, it would have been or last night or something like that. It was almost a month between games. So now everybody's in this. Everybody's in the same boat. It's not like a handful of teams along with the Islanders. It's a lot of teams. So
Yeah.
they have an opportunity here. Not to kind of belabor this point, but I'm trying to be the optimist. Like this team needs to kind of play together and rebuild that chemistry. Um, we'll see what happens. Along the same lines, I wanted to get your tired and wired thoughts on the Islanders rest of the season. So we get to kind of galaxy brain here. The tired ones are probably a little bit easier. Definitely curious on your wired thoughts as the Islanders move forward.
Yeah. First tired that comes to mind for me is like leave Zdeno Chara alone. I'm tired of it. It is what it is, and he hasn't been as bad as you think as the games have gone on. I mean, it's been a long time, and I say that like the beginning of the season wasn't that long ago, but I don't feel like in the more recent games I haven't said to myself, God, this guy's not with it right now. He just doesn't. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know which way is up. I feel like I haven't done that in a little while for him. So that's definitely my first tired.
He's handling the puck a little bit better.
A little better.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
I don't like him in the lineup, but people are also complaining about Aho. And
Right.
people only want Salo in the lineup because he's a young guy that has promise.
Right.
You're putting in young guys like that and you're kind of giving them a shot. They're gonna make mistakes. Are we there yet in the season where we're just cool with that? I don't know.
It's tough to tell. I mean, it's such an awkward time for the Islanders right now, with their position in the standings versus their expectations and where they see themselves at the end of the year. You know, the trade deadline, I know it's a little late this year, not that far still.
A little less than
A little
3 months.
yeah. So it's like yeah, it's tough. It's
What
tough.
is 3? Yeah,
It's 3 months.
yeah. Far enough.
Far enough.
Yeah. So what are some wired thoughts there?
First line Wallstrom. We got him. Albeit not with Matt Barzal, but we got him. And he's been good. I don't know that it's gonna stick. Everybody's coming back, so we'll see what happens there. But it was good to see. He definitely and I think we left off before everything kind of shut down for a little bit with Trotz said, yeah, he's forcing my hand a little bit. He's making some good plays out there, and he should be getting more minutes because he's proving it. Unfortunately, Barzal went down with COVID. We'll see if it sticks, but it was good to see he got the shot. I think playing with JG Pajot was fine. And maybe that's the reason why he got first line minutes because he has the chemistry there with him. But albeit he was playing against the teams that he was on the first line for, he was playing against the best defense for that team. So it was good to see he was productive, and there weren't any glaring moments out there where he was on the ice and you were like, oh, that's bad. He's handling himself well. He's handling himself like a top 6 forward. I did, I do know that Trotz has those minor details and the focusing issues that he has in the back of his head, but it seems like he's really worked on it, and it seems like it shouldn't be an issue moving forward. So I'll be interested to see tonight what the lines are going to look like, because he's not, those 4 players aren't going to be available. So, but when they come back, I'm hoping to see finally the trigger pulled on the Wallstrom Barzal duo.
That would be great. Kind of agree on both of those. A little tired of the Chara thing. Need to see more of the, Wallstrom. Just put him up there.
Yeah.
I'm at that point. You have nothing to lose at this point.
Also
Just
wired.
go for it.
I'm also wired on Noah Dobson. Loving his play. He just looks
Yeah,
great.
since
He's
he must have listened to us because I was all over him. It was not necessarily kind. I was like, "Is do we need to rethink what we think of him as a player?"
and
Right?
then he got that. I don't know if it was. I don't know if that conversation we had was a result of him sitting in the press box, or if it came right after.
He sat, I think, afterwards.
Okay, whatever that one game in the press box was, it worked, and maybe it was a lack of opportunity because 5 defensemen were down after that, or 4 defensemen were down after that, and he needed to play. There was no option. So he got the time, he got the minutes, and then suddenly it was like, "Oh, there's Noah Dobson."
Yeah.
So,
Now
wired
I'm
on that
back.
as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Um, and I'll eat crow on it. That's fine. I'm fine because you were
Listen,
all like, "Oh, I think he could do it. He's a puck moving defenseman. He can score goals." And I was like, "Great."
prove
He
it.
needs any kind of confidence or anything. He needs. I think the word I used was authority. He needs to kind of move the puck with authority. He needs to shoot it with authority. He's just like lollipopping it towards the net. You're just not going to have any success like that. And then he starts wiring home
Right,
game-winning goals left and right late in games, which speaks. The more he did it, the more Trotz gains trust in him, and then he's out there late in games to keep doing it. Um, so I definitely agree there. Related question: we kind of talked about this before
mhm.
on other shows, different seasons of the show. Um, what do the Islanders need to do to make this season a success? Rather, I can ask it in a different way. What does success mean to the Islanders this season?
I think the most important thing, and I've been saying this for, however long it's been a downward spiral for the Islanders. I've been saying that this season, if they fail to clinch a playoff spot, doesn't necessarily mean that everyone needs to get fired and blow things up and change everything. What success will look like for them if they don't make the playoffs is that they find consistency in their game. Meaning, Anthony Beauvillier is a consistent player night in and night out. Oliver Wahlstrom develops into that goal scorer consistently. Brock Nelson, additionally, I'm gonna give him a little bit of a longer leash because he's just been in and out with injury and illness.
When he's
But
been in, he's been great.
when he's been in, he's been great, and we've wanted consistency from him for a while. It seems like it's starting to happen. It's just the unfortunate circumstances for him, but I'm giving him a longer leash. I think it's there. So it's just really the consistency from these guys, and maybe Parise can find his game. Maybe I mean that doesn't really matter as much as a Paul Mary who needs to find his game because he's signed to another 3 years after this season. So finding that consistency in certain players, the core, so that they can come back next year and ride that momentum, even if they don't make the playoffs this year, is key. That's probably the only thing that they can do that will define success if they don't make the playoffs.
I love all of that. I couldn't agree more. I think getting the most out of the players that are going to be on your roster moving
Yeah,
forward is absolutely important. I don't want to dive too deep on Palmieri because I have a note on that in a few
sure.
minutes. But definitely agree. I think Bavillier might be the biggest one,
Yeah, and that's
right?
the
Like
most important one because
he's supposed to be that secondary scoring. That shouldn't.
yeah,
It should be Barzal, uh, Wallstrom as that top tier, and then Nelson, Bavillier,
Villiers, yeah.
and Palmieri in
He
the middle.
The problem is Beauvillier has that dynamic that Barzal possesses, right? Not as good, but he's got that dynamic. He's supposed to be a threat. He has the speed, he has the skill. He just needs to find the finish, and it's just eluding him right now.
Yeah, I think there's that focus just isn't there. You saw that in a few different spots, and then you saw it come back. The great back checks. We talked
Yeah,
about that a couple weeks ago. He just needs to be in that middle tier. He needs to be that secondary scoring. Again, Parise's not that guy. Peugeot isn't necessarily that guy, but he could sneak into that second tier if he gets on a run.
sure.
He's more of a playoff performer, which
That's
is
another
totally
one
fine with
too.
me. Um, but I'm not worried about that. It's that secondary scoring. The Lee, Nelson, Bavillier, Palmieri group is not performing. I know Palmieri's on that first line, but I would put Wallstrom and Barzell in a different category than those other guys.
Right.
That's where we need to see, to me, and to your point, more consistency out of that middle group. Because like I said, as we started the show, I was saying Palmieri, Bailey, Parise, Beauvillier with just 7 goals in the season. That's unacceptable, right? Parise aside, that's unacceptable from those guys. And Bailey might just be whatever. I don't think about him much anymore. He was awful, and I really didn't like him as a player. He stepped up for 3 seasons or 4 seasons, and now he's kind of back to like an absolute ghost out there. So I don't know. He didn't just forget, and maybe we were just being too harsh on him to begin with. But now it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
I think for me, them playing above 500 hockey the rest of the way, even if that means they don't make it. And then player growth, as you said, you want to see, and I'll add in Dobson and Sorokin.
Sure.
If it means Sorokin's playing more games and we get to see more of him, playing really well on a regular basis, even if they're not getting the results, but he's clearly not the problem. I think that's fine. I want to see Dobson continue this. I don't want to just see like, oh yeah, that good stretch in November, December, and then that was it.
Right.
I want to see him continually. I don't need him to score the goals, but play the way he's playing.
No,
the results will
completely
follow,
agree.
right? So I think that's my only additions to
Consistency. That's the
consistency
only
and
word.
really the team in general. But there's like certain players where you're like, you don't get a pass. You don't get a pass.
Right.
I heard, I'm stealing this directly from Dangle, where it's like, no, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, you don't get a pass. You get paid and enough where you lost that right. We're going to be on you
in that category for the Islanders. You're talking Josh Bailey. You're talking Kyle Palmieri, Zach Parise.
No, I take him. I take him out of that. That's not why he's there. He's doing his job for what he was brought in to do.
I agree with that.
It's
but
like
Anthony Beauvillier.
You can't Anthony Beauvillier, Nelson
Scott
again.
Mayfield.
You can kind of give him a little bit of a thing. Yeah, there's certain players where you're like, you don't get a pass, man.
Right.
You got your nice. Although Mayfield will, I think, need a deal. He's signed for a little while longer. You just don't. You've now set the bar higher. You've played better than this.
Yeah.
So you have to find a way to step up. That goes for Lee too. I don't want to leave him. He's not absolved from this.
Yeah, that's true.
He's had his little bursts, but it's inconsistent, and that's not acceptable, right? Like you gotta, especially as the captain, right? And I think he does more than that, which is great. But finding that consistency and kind of being the leader, so that the team can not find some momentum. At this point, like I said, everyone's in the same boat. Just move forward. He even said it. Just we are where we are now, but we'll figure it out.
Yep.
Before we jump over to our interview with Kevin, Kurz, I want to go kind of dive in on Kyle Palmieri for a second.
Sure.
Struggling to score. Not a surprise. I'm not saying anything that we even said here or that anyone could guess. In the absence of that, and in addition to that, he needs a thing. I don't know if you watched the Leafs documentary on Amazon. When the head coach, whose name is escaping me,
Sheldon Keefe,
went up to a player, again, whose name is also escaping me, that wound up being picked up on waivers.
Jimmy Vesey.
Thank you. What do I do without you? We're a good team. We should do this more. And he says, you need a thing. What's your thing?
Yeah.
Palmieri's not scoring, and he needs to. I'm not absolving him of that. However, in absence and in addition to it, he needs a thing. Can he be Brad Marchand ultralight? Can he be, because he has that little pesty, annoying, get in your face thing.
He was pegged to be a Bruin before he was an Islander.
Does he need that nastiness? Does he
He has it.
Because Komarov did that too, right? Like to a different degree. And Komarov was a real pest in a great way for this team. In addition to like having a Clutterbuck running around and Martin, really to probably just like defend him with actual fists. Does he need that? Does the team need that from him? That extra grit with the identity line not being who they are. Can he do that if he's not scoring goals?
He needs to be the guy, if he's not going to score, who creates room for the other two guys he's on the ice with. More than likely, it'll continue to be Peugeot and Wallstrom when things return to normal, or Parise and Wallstrom when things return to normal and on
That
the
line getting back
roster.
together would be fine. I think swapping them
Which would,
for
yes,
finally for good.
it would
I
be.
agree with you. We disagree at the beginning of the season, but I can come around on it. That line is good.
Right.
Parise will Palmieri Peugeot
Yep.
is a good line.
Right. So if he can create room for Peugeot and Parise to do their thing, make other guys look over their shoulder like, hey, is Kyle Palmer going to hit me right now, and distract them,
Get
and
nasty
then
in front of the net.
right, get nasty in front of the net and create space for them to make a play. That's good enough for this season, or until he starts scoring.
He needs to do both. Like he can do both things. I think
Sure.
that's more of the point. That's why I say, in absence of and in addition to,
Yeah.
in absence of the scoring, but in addition also to that, he kind of needs to find a thing.
Yeah, no, couldn't
We
agree more. And I think that is his thing. He definitely has that edge. He has that nastiness. He's not afraid to throw the body. He most of the time is below the dots, just above the crease anyway.
Yeah,
So
he's
yeah,
always there in the scrum, and I
yeah,
can appreciate that about his game. And I'm trying to look at him like I look at Parise. The thing that stops me is that that's not why he's there.
right.
He was there to be that middle tier, that second tier scoring
Agreed.
to really keep the Islanders buoyed. And we saw him do it under really tight pressure in the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
So it's disappointing. Now he's trending down in the regular season as far as his stats are concerned.
agreed.
You wonder, okay, is this the trend or is this an outlier season or two?
It's so tough, man. This season
At
is just
that
like,
age,
what is it?
right, exactly. So I think that's where I'm trying to decide what he is, and did they make the we praised it that they signed him, and then are we going to immediately kind of regret that? It's a really tough call. He has some time. Again, there's over 50 games left this season. There's a lot of time to kind of right that ship and at least play a good game,
Yeah,
for the time being, and gain that trust back with on their fans and the coaching staff.
right.
But remains to be seen.
Yeah, we'll see.
So before we get to our interview with Kevin Kurz, let's briefly hear from our sponsors.
Hockey fans, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has a no-brainer offer that'll make you a winner once any shot gets past the goalie. New customers can bet just $1 on any NHL game and win $100 in free bets if either team scores. The NHL got rid of ties in 2005, so you know someone is going to light the lamp. If Sportsbook isn't yet available in your state, no worries. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with the DraftKings Daily Fantasy Hockey Contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN, throw down $1 on any NHL game, and win $100 in free bets if either team scores a goal. That's promo code THPN this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. Must be 21 years or older, New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Hey fellas, this episode of Nassman Hockey is brought to you by your favorite producers of grooming tools, Manscaped. The global leaders in below-the-waist grooming are leaving 2021 with new product. Clean yourself into the new year with the Ultra Premium Body Wash. Also, special offer alert, use code NHP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. 4 million men already trust Manscaped, and it's time to join them. 2022 is on its way, and the last thing you want is to be the guy with overgrown hair getting in your way of making this year your best one yet. 2021 sucked, and that's why Manscaped are making a big splash and upping your grooming game. Their signature lawnmower 4.0 is here to take down every hair in its path. The tool is amazing, and I'm confident using the 4.0 to leave 2021 and enter 2022 a clean-shaved man. You know what else I'm confident about? Smelling like $1,000,000. You may be asking how, and I'm happy to tell you how I did it. I used the Manscaped Refined Cologne, with the same signature scent that's in all Manscaped formulas, a great complement to your collection. Use the code NHP20 for 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. I'm all in on confidence and smelling good this new year. Join me with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code NHP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code NHP20. Happy New Year from Manscaped.
We're here with Kevin Kurz of The Athletic, formerly covering the San Jose Sharks, but now out east with the New York Islanders. Kevin, how has the transition been to New York? Any surprises? I know the move was a little difficult for you.
Well, I wish it was August and not December. That definitely complicated a little bit. Fortunately, no weather issues. Yeah, I mean, it's tough picking up and moving across the country and jumping into a new beat. I've still only seen the Islanders play live one time. I figured it'd be at least 3 by now, and I guess tonight would have been the 4th. But it's been good so far. It'll take some time, I think, to settle in, and I'd certainly like to see some more games here sooner than later, like everybody would. It's been a process, but I think getting settled in now and looking forward here to the last 60-70% of the season or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think we're all looking forward to that. It's getting a little tired for everybody to be digging into things and stories, and it's really just kind of been the same problem over and over, especially for the Islanders this season. I think a lot of Islander fans are just exhausted dealing with it. Did Arthur Staple did this for a long time. We haven't had him on the show yet. A little tease for folks. We are trying to work on something there. But did Arthur Staple or any other of the Islanders media group give you any advice? I know we were talking briefly about Twitter craziness beforehand. So any advice how to deal with some things out here?
Yeah, there's been some messages that have been passed along. Islanders Twitter, I know, is a little bit rambunctious at times. But
that's generous.
That doesn't bother me. If it's in some ways it's like San Jose, and I wrote this in my intro about 3 weeks ago. When I got to San Jose in 2011, it was the same thing. They were coming off of back-to-back losses in the conference final, coincidentally enough. And, there were other teams that were more popular in the immediate vicinity. The Golden State Warriors, they didn't become the generational Warriors until a couple years later, but they were still a popular team. The San Francisco Giants, they won the World Series, I think, my first year there. They're first of 3. 49ers made a couple Super Bowls. The Raiders were still in Oakland. It was a congested sports scene, but, the Sharks were the only team that said San Jose in front of the team nickname. And that was a sense of pride for the people there. And that was why they built the fan base that they did, is because it was maybe smaller than some of the other fan bases, even compared to LA or a Denver in their heyday. But they were very passionate, and I got that sense right away. So I think there's some similarities. You can draw some similarities between the Sharks fan base and the Islanders fan base here, because obviously, they don't have the national cachet of the Rangers, an original 6 team, the Giants, the Jets, the Mets. I mean, you guys know. So I think the fact that they call Long Island their home, essentially. That's a sense of pride for the fans, and that that just makes that bond, I think, between the fan and the team that much stronger.
Yeah, I'm nervous now to ask you to remind us rather what happened with the Sharks following those back-to-back conference final appearances. But I'll circle back to that a little bit later. I think to start on the reporter side, because I think people are really interested in the dynamic and how a lot of this works as far as access and things. And we were wondering, have you noticed a lot of differences coming to Long Island? I know things have been over Zoom, but in terms of access to information and what you were used to out in San Jose, and maybe the tips and different things, how you write those stories, are you noticing a lot of differences versus your time out in San Jose?
Well, it's tough to say because I still haven't been in a dressing room yet, or no one's been in a dressing room in almost 2 years now. So, with everything on Zoom, it's a little bit it's still a little bit awkward at times. I haven't talked to Barry Trotz other than on these Zoom interviews where normally a beat reporter will have off the record conversations or even just personal conversations sometimes with the guys that you're covering, particularly the head coaches. So that part again, that's why I wish it was not only do I wish it was the start of the season, I also wish we were all over all this COVID bullshit too. That doesn't seem to be going away yet. So, my hope is that some point, maybe after the non-Olympic break or whatever you want to call it, things start to settle down and becomes more normal. So I could probably make more of a comparison then. But obviously people have told me that Lou is very, not so open with information. And there was somebody, a work colleague texted me, I won't say who, and he said, you're going from Doug Wilson to Lou Lamoriello with one of those emojis, I guess the eek emoji, because Doug Wilson was the same way. The Sharks didn't like to give out information either. So I guess maybe I'm a little bit used to that. And it was a source of sometimes some battles between myself and the Sharks organization and the PR staff. And I'm sure there will be some moments like that here at some point. But it is what it is. I think more teams. Well, maybe that's not true. It seems to ebb and flow. Sometimes it seems that the league is trending towards less information, but then I almost feel like the last couple of years, other teams have been more open with injuries. Stuff's going to get around anyway. So there's nothing I can really do about that. You just got to deal with it. And fortunately, I've been doing this a while. That if there's a certain storyline I want to pursue and the Islanders are being tight-lipped about it, I'm pretty confident I can call around and get perspectives from other people and other sources around the league.
What did you know about the team, and what was your impression of the Islanders? Because they've kind of gone through this renaissance, this start of the season notwithstanding. What was your impression of the team? What did you know about them before being interested in covering the team?
Yeah, I mean, before Lou and Barry, I always looked at them as sort of I don't want to say dysfunctional because that's too strong of a word, but they just never seemed to have it all together and under previous head coaches and under Garth Snow. It seems to me that bringing in Lou and bringing in Barry has given the franchise stability, and now the new building I think could lead to a whole bunch of positive developments with the organization. Does this now become more of a destination for free agents, say? And I would think it would. So, I would be more interested to hear what you guys would have to say about that. Was that accurate, or is that at least on the right track?
I think you're on the right track there for sure. I know a lot of the fans hope that that's the case as well. They've been screaming for another superstar or two along with Matt Barzal. So I don't know if the opportunity has necessarily presented itself. A lot of the fans are worried about if there were swings and misses. But those are things we can definitely talk about a little bit later. But the new building I've been to, it's fantastic. I couldn't believe what I was looking at walking into the building, and they have the state of the art practice arena. So you would think that those things, plus to add the fact that everybody who plays on Long Island loves living there, after they're there. So you would think that all those things together would attract more players and free agents to the team. So I guess it was a bit of a different approach by Lou Lamoriello this summer, when he, instead of acquiring superstars, got a bunch of role players or middle six guys.
What he's done in his tenure here, really, which is being very careful about who he's plugging in as far as the chemistry.
Right.
It's very kind of these chess moves that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that stuff because I saw a team that had such great chemistry with Joe Pavelski as the captain and Joe Thornton there and Logan Couture and Brent Burns. And I saw it all, go to crap when they let Joe Pavelski walk. And, they bring in a guy like Evander Kane who is clearly disruptive. So I'm a big believer in that stuff. And on another note, I will say that when I was talking to some of the Sharks players, and I told them, I'd been there for 10 years. Guys like Logan Couture and Brent Burns, I spent 10 years with those guys covering them, and they both said, and these are two superstars in the league, they both said how much they liked playing in that building, how it was a great atmosphere, and so I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, the Islanders had definitely gone through, and you mentioned kind of previous to Trotz and Lamoriello, they had an identity, but no one to hone the energy. It was like somebody right out of college. They had the right pieces. We've talked about it before. I've written about how really this identity was forged in 2013. That series against the Penguins showed that there was something there. Now, it took much longer than anyone would have liked to actually get the momentum behind it and the coaching, but now getting to this point, and maybe closer to your point, which was, they looking for superstars, this and that. I think a lot of fans would agree that they're only a couple pieces away. They let some of those pieces walk, unfortunately, in Devin Taves. Now they have to replace it, but that's tough. I think Lamoriello continues to abide by the line. If you have time, use it. I think everyone's definition of that is different than lose, which is why fans get nervous and are screaming for trades and all of that. So that's where the push and pull comes, and the faith in Lou crew is kind of waning as the team falters. But I have more directed questions on that in a second, and I do want to turn our attention to your most recent article, specifically to something I've mentioned on the show, though it was the Lightning and not the Hurricanes, about how they got really far, they took a step back. Neither of those teams' progressions were linear. In other words, they took a step back after long playoff runs, and they had to re-gear up. They didn't tear it all down, and you kind of explore that from what you've observed so far, at as much of a third party as you can be as in the Islanders sphere. Are they capable of that rebuild from what you've seen? What do you think they need to kind of go through? Because I think in an article you're kind of confined. So if you had other ideas,
I'd like to see them play a little bit more in person before I make any sort of judgments like that in terms of whether I think the right core is here. But obviously, the history suggests that they do have a strong core just based on their success over the last few years. And you mentioned the Lightning, and I should have mentioned this too. The Sharks did the same thing, and in 20. Let me get my years straight here. In 2014, they were reverse swept by the Kings in the first round. They took a step backwards the next year, kind of a planned. It was a planned retooling. It was different from the Islanders because the Islanders obviously planned on going for it this year, and it's not happening. But they took a step back. They kept their core together, and then they used that subsequent offseason to bring in some veterans, change their roster a little bit. And they made the Stanley Cup Finals in 2016. So you're right. I mean, your point about the Islanders is valid too. So is the right core in place here? I guess, we'll see. I know maybe some of these guys are getting on in age, and you look at the stat lines of guys like Palmieri and Josh Bailey, and it's, the numbers are not there. So maybe it's time to try and move one of your veteran pieces in the offseason if you believe in giving a guy like Wahlstrom more of a role moving forward. And I know that seems to be something the fans want. But, again, I'm a big believer in if your core is strong and they believe in each other and they're of the right age and they still are in the primes of their careers and they can help foster that type of chemistry where guys have to play for one another and guys have to come together in tough times, then, you don't blow it up. And to me, again, I'd like to see a little bit more, but this team is not in blow up mode. And if they miss the playoffs this season, I don't think it's a complete disaster. But if you do miss the playoffs this season, it's going to be a hell of an important offseason.
Yeah, I think there's more. Like, people want more out of Beauvillier and some of those other role players.
Right.
So that's where Wahlstrom can kind of come in there. I think he's really good. Nelson's still a good piece. Palmieri, who we're going to talk about after, when we do the rest of the episode, wondering about what his role actually is. How can he mold from just an offensive player to maybe something more than that and kind of mold his identity. It's definitely the Baileys and some of those other players that need to step up. But I'll leave the floor to James for a second.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your article that the Islanders would consider trading some of their veteran UFAs, Zach Parise, maybe even Zdeno Chara if they can get something for him, which could yield some decent assets. But how some fans are asking if Varlamov could be a trade chip. What are your
Yeah, I
thoughts
wonder
on
That's a
that?
good question. I think my understanding of the goaltending position and two of my closest friends in the business and guys I've known forever are Marty Baron and Brian Boucher, and I always call them when I have goalie questions. And I'm pretty sure it was Marty who told me one time, when you're a team and you trade for a goalie at the deadline, that's really risky. So I tend to think if that's and how many times have we seen goalies mid-season trade and then they help their teams over the top? It doesn't happen. And so my understanding of that position is it's just if it's a trade deadline deal where you're talking 4 weeks, 5 weeks left in the regular season, I guess it's 5 or 6 weeks left in the regular season. That's probably not enough time for that goalie to get acclimated enough with his teammates to go on a long run. So, would a Varlamov trade make sense at some point? I would think absolutely, but I tend to think that's probably a summer trade, unless there's some team that has just brutal injury issues and becomes desperate. But that's where that would be my, I guess, prediction on that. But and I think you need to see Sorokin a little bit more of a sample size before you're going to completely anoint him as the number one franchise goalie.
I think it's interesting because I'm not opposed to getting assets for Varlamov. If this is indeed somewhat of a lost season and it's a little bit of a on the fly retool, which is the nicer way GMs seem to be going about saying things like that. Not
I know, don't they? They all have their words. We went through them. They're all R words in San Jose. Reset, retool, replenish. It's like, come on, dude, just call it a friggin' rebuild.
Just like to be like the Rangers, for all their faults and just being the Rangers in general from our perspective.
Yeah, the Rangers and the Blackhawks can get away with doing that and telegraphing that because their fans are still going to be there for the long run. In San Jose, they couldn't do it, and I'm sure they certainly don't want to do that here with the new building.
No, and I think with a lot of what the Islanders fans have gone through over the last, our hopes are up at this point, right? That's, I think, the impetus of this kind of do something. Like, we were right there. You can't let it slip through. That patience is kind of worn out. Like, we've already had the patience. We can't do this again. It's been, decades. We held onto that Bates penalty shot goal for a decade and a half. Like, we can't do the Pulak thing. Can't be the next Bates goal for the next decade and a half. Like, that just can't be a thing. But to kind of finish up the Varlamov conversation, I'm worried about that because the Islanders have relied on two goalies for the last 3 seasons. So I wonder if that's a possibility simply from that perspective. Not because that's a bad move from an assets perspective, but simply, do you want to give Sorokin, who said himself he likes to play, he plays better when he gets the games and the minutes, although goalies seem to have a sweet spot. Thomas Greiss, for instance, had that 41 to 43 games. His numbers are 920, 925 in those years. I get worried about having one goalie, especially without really one ready in the pipeline.
Yeah, 100%.
Eric isn't there.
Yeah,
I can't even name another one.
It always seems, and I'm not super familiar with which veteran goalies are pending UFAs this summer, but there always seems to be at least a handful of guys that are at least serviceable NHL backups, even if they might not be the sexiest names around. You just look at Martin Jones, who I covered for the last 6 seasons, and the last 3 of which were horrible. He ends up going to Philadelphia, and now his numbers are great. Sometimes these guys are so hard to predict, but it's a valid point. I agree with you. It seems more teams are going towards this 45 games for one guy, 40 for or whatever it is, 35 for the other guy. I know that math doesn't add up, but you know what I'm getting at.
The way that they play, they can't have they couldn't get a guy like Martin Jones or a Jake Allen, and not to say that like they're serviceable in their roles in those cities when they were there or where they are now. the Islanders depend on it every single night. They're not going into games where you're putting your best goalie in the game that with the best chance to win, right? I've heard that before. That's not the case with the Islanders. Every game is the same 2-1, 3-2 game in mind, right? Like
that's interesting.
The latitude just isn't quite there for this club. Where with other ones, they're going even they put their better goalie in against the team that they're just going to win.
Right.
If the hard game is the hard game, throw your guy out there.
But obviously it depends. If you're going to trade Varlamov, what are you getting back for him? Are you getting a mobile defenseman? Are you getting a 20, 25 goal winger? I mean, that's something you have to weigh.
That's a fair point. The timing, right? If Sorokin can indeed play the rest of the way, by the time they trade Varlamov, they're like, all right, he's good. If there's no more back-to-backs or very limited, they're against teams we think we could beat. Skara can do it, or who else is around the organization. I doubt it's Corey Schneider. It is some cap relief long term. That's a good idea. I think the issue is, and what we've seen before, Thomas Greiss did this 2 years ago. Sorokin did it last year. A goalie goes down in the playoffs. The other one really carried it for the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
Sorokin came in, and I'm forgetting the series that he won. Was it Boston?
They won Boston. He actually,
or was it the first
carried the load against Pittsburgh?
Against Pittsburgh. So Varlamov goes down. Sorokin comes in, kind of carries them into the next round, and then Varlamov takes them the rest of the way. Greiss also did a really good job of coming in as relief in the Philadelphia series 2 years ago. So, or whatever that is, I can't even tell. 2 playoff years ago. So that gets confusing too.
Bubble.
So, or at least presents a problem where
in the bubble.
In the bubble. They because we were at Oyster Bay, Jay.
Yes, we were
watching one of those games. But so I think that's where I get nervous. Like, they've clearly relied on this thing. I don't know how if it's a lost season, and that's fine. We can all agree with that and move on.
Well, again, I don't see something like that happening mid-season. I think that's something you wait until the off season to address.
You mentioned the puck-moving defenseman before, and I have to ask this question because the name has been circulating, and I had written a story not too long after it started circulating that I at the fourth period was informed that Jacob Chychrun's name is on the table. They're not necessarily saying no to a trade, albeit the ask is massive. Just yesterday, your colleague Arthur Staple wrote something about someone asked him if the Rangers would inquire, and he said it would cost something like Keandre Miller, this year's first round pick, and then one of Zach Jones, Morgan Barron, and Dylan Garand. To me, it's more likely an offseason move, like similar to the Semyon Varlamov deal. But is he the defenseman that the Islanders really are missing right now that is hindering that blue line?
I'll tell you, I really liked him last year, and I saw him a lot because the Sharks and the Coyotes were in the same division, so they played each other. What was it, 8 times, 10 times, or whatever it was. And there were nights he was the best player on the ice. I haven't watched Arizona too much this year. I'm under the impression that maybe he's struggling a little bit, but he's also surrounded by a bunch of stiffs, so
sure.
That doesn't help.
Andrew Ladd has 5 goals. Okay,
what's that?
Andrew Ladd has 5 goals. How dare you besmirch the name of the
So maybe it's tough to get a read on him this year just because of who his teammates are. But
sure,
I loved him as a player last year on that Coyotes team. I mean, did he finish in the Norris Trophy voting? He
did. Yeah, he was not. I don't think he was in the finalists, but
I might have gave him my 5th place vote if I'm thinking back correctly.
Yeah,
I might have had him in my top 5, and I was probably biased a little bit just from watching him so much. But
he scored 18 goals in 56 games as a defenseman.
Yeah, and he would hit. He was physical and he was all over the ice and responsible. Yeah, I thought he was outstanding. But I mean, do you want to give up on a team that's already sort of got a concerns in terms of their depth? And we'll see where this first round pick ends up. I mean, if you miss the playoffs, or they're 4th from the bottom right now, just in terms of points percentage. I don't think there's any guarantee. Now, they'll probably be better than that once they get everybody back, but how much better is debatable. Even if it's a top 6, top 8 pick, there's a lot of value in there. So
Right.
I'm under the impression they'll do something. There's a whole there's 56 games left. I think you wrote in your article they have to go 33, 17, and 4, something to that
something like that.
that
Yeah.
effect to get in and around that 95 point mark, which may not get them in. You know,
No, I mean the number I look at now is yes, I know 5 teams out of the Metropolitan Division can in theory make it, but 17 points behind the Penguins. I mean they're in fourth place. That's why it really gives me pause when I think, can this team really get back into it? When they're that far gone. But it's not just the fact that they're that many points behind. It's that they're going through all this COVID stuff again. They got a short these games. I mean, you look at some of the games just last night. I mean, they're wide open. There's a bunch of goals. They're sloppy. I mean, that's how this season for every team is probably going to look for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and that does not set any team up for success. Teams that need to go on runs need to develop chemistry. You need to get a hot line going, or at least 2 hot lines going. You're especially with this team, your goalie has to play in front of a responsible top 6 defense,
Right.
Defense pairs. And it's not a recipe the way the season is now for any team. It's not a recipe for any team to really go on a run. So I'm not saying it can't happen, but
Yeah.
it makes it more difficult when you don't know who's going to be in the lineup on a nightly basis.
Oh, it's certainly, and I think, I wrote something recently to the effect of at least everyone's in the same boat now, right? All the craziness is hitting everybody. So there's
right,
at least more of a
why you can't
level
be in
playing
last
field.
place when everybody's in the same boat. You got to be
Well, now, maybe a week or so ago as well, but now in particular, with a majority of the season still yet to go, now everyone's truly on the same page. Everyone's save for maybe 1 or 2 teams. I can't remember who that were
Right.
somehow without COVID cases, but I'm trying to think, as an Islander fan who's kind of seen it, this is still the best chance we've had. I know where we're sitting now. This is the best chance the team has had in forever. The last 3 seasons, I don't think were a fluke. Maybe after the first season, you could think that. It's definitely going to be it's a tough climb. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm trying to remain positive. And I'll ask because you said responsible defense. So I think, kind of zeroing in on that and a particular player, a lot of fans have it out for Zdeno Chara right now.
Right.
Is as someone that's really seeing him for the first time in a while, because he's never played in the West. But maybe seeing him on a more concentrated basis the last little while, is he as bad as Islander fans are making it out? Because Trotz seems to have a different perspective on all of this than maybe the rest of the fan base.
No, I think he's fine as a third pair D-man, but I don't think he should be playing. What is he at about 17 minutes a night right now?
Something like that.
Yeah.
A lot of it's PK, which is debatable whether or not he's effective in that role. He'll eat pucks.
Well, those guys, I mean, he's almost like Brent Burns like that. Brent Burns was never the most responsible defenseman, but he's got that reach that just having that reach and that size alone lets you make up for mistakes, right? Or
Sure.
maybe being a step too slow. So I think PK, I have to watch. I would like to watch a little bit more. I think he's fine as a 6D man, and a lot of people that I talked to before I moved here would say the same thing, that as a 6D man he's fine, and that's why I think if you are selling at the deadline, I think you could potentially get a mid to late round pick for him. But is he a complete disaster out there on every shift? I mean, no, he's not. He's just he's old and he's slow and he's still got that reach, and he's still got some of the physical intimidation factor. And Barry, I know just the other day was praising how good he is in terms of leadership with some of the young guys, and that could pay dividends in the long run, right? We don't know what's going on behind closed doors, but you can be sure that Zdeno Chara is a guy that some of those young D-men and even some of the young forwards are looking up to.
Yeah, no, we spoke about that before the season even started, how good it would likely be for Noah Dobson's development. He seemingly, even though they split up as a pairing and then maybe they were put back together occasionally, but he's seemingly taking strides after a slower start, but he's looking real good now.
Mm-hmm.
the last thing that we wanted to ask you, it's a two-parter. Wanted to know one thing that you're going to miss the most about being in San Jose, and then to follow up, what are you looking forward to most being on Long Island?
Personally, or from a hockey perspective?
That's up to you.
In San Jose, I'm going to miss the weather, obviously, the Mexican food from a personal standpoint. The driving to wine country was nice, or driving south to San Luis Obispo, the little towns around San Jose. Downtown San Jose was never anything that was too appealing, but the towns around it were nice. That I'll miss. So many good people I worked with out there. I worked at NBC for 6 years, so the broadcast crew and a lot of those NBC people are they're really solid people, and they're passionate about hockey. It's just in a less it's just in a smaller market, and I think that's something that maybe I didn't recognize when I moved from Philadelphia to San Jose. Was everybody working in hockey still has that same passion for the sport, no matter where they are, whether they're in New York, San Jose, Chicago, Florida, Montreal. The people that get involved in the sport are passionate across the board, and so that's what I like. I think the most about just working in hockey in general, and then being here in New York. I always felt like I was more of an East Coast guy. I grew up a Philly fan, and I rooted for the Eagles and the Phillies and the Flyers, and I read all the newspaper columnists and listened to sports talk radio, and I think that sort of formed my media personality almost as it is, and so I tend to think I fit in a little bit more here than I probably did in California. There were probably at least there was certainly a few people that when I got to San Jose, they were like, "Well, who the hell is this guy to tell us about our hockey team?" Even when people criticized the Sharks when I got there, it was almost with kid gloves, just because that's just the way of life in California. And I was never like that. I was if this guy sucks, I'm gonna say that he sucks in some way, shape, or form. I'm gonna be a little bit more tactful than saying he sucks, but
you can tell us. You can tell us whoever the Islanders.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my point. I'm gonna be direct about it. So nothing's gonna change in that regard. The way I cover the team, and if that pisses a couple people off along the way, I don't think you're doing your job as a beat reporter if you're not pissing some people off from time to time, and you don't do it on purpose, but and if you're being unfair, then that's a problem. But as long as it's fair and as long as it's honest, I think that's what I think people out here in East Coast hockey markets tend to appreciate.
Yeah, there are a lot of Islander fans that have just been around for a long time. They've seen the ups and downs. San Jose had a pretty positive trajectory, I think, over like the 90s weren't exactly kind to them, but really a lot of the time with Joe Thornton and moving forward, were pretty good. So I think it's a little harder to have that kind of masochistic.
They were, but it was the same thing. They'd go on runs and then they'd come up short, like it was here, and then
that's the heartrait.
And then you come up short a couple years in a row. It's like fire everybody, trade everybody. It's like, well, no, that's not really how it works. So just
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely the worry is about that core, and it was like St. Louis and San Jose for years were like, yeah, they have to do it. That was like Vegas last year, and they just totally fell off. Against the Canadiens, and that always like teams lose to other teams. Read Vancouver, and they lose to a team like Boston, and they blow up their entire roster, and then they can never make it back, despite being President's Trophy winners and all of that. So it's tough. I think general managers they get hesitant to do that and lose way too smart to start trading away assets. But it is complicated. The patience is really not there. 3 years is frankly not enough, even for how well they did. It was just a great extra thing that they kept making it further. They have some more goodwill to build up, because you saw how very quickly it just got taken away. They lost a bunch of games in a row, and people were like, "Is Barry Trotz going to get fired?" And it was that was a difficult conversation for us to be having, on this show, or just be reading on the internet, which it seems like you have a better handle on it than we do. We need to take a page out of the Kevin Kurz Twitter book, but that I think is the struggle that emotional, like we've just done it for so long.
Yeah.
The new arena helps. Lou and Barry help. Barzal helps. Sorokin, that was a big get. That was one of the more surprising things, frankly, to see. That I did not think that would actually happen. I thought that would be like every other, especially goalies for the Islanders. Jeez,
Yeah.
that's never a thing. But any last words? Anything you want to say to Islander fans, the East Coast?
No. I'm I just I'd like to watch some more games here and and have a better read on the team because you can't in my position anyway. You can I've read everything Arthur's written this year, and but you want to watch this stuff with your own two eyes, and you want to do it in person, and so hopefully these next couple home games get played, and then I'm planning on going to Seattle and Vancouver to the 2 road games, and then we'll see from there. But
well, James, you have anything else?
No, go ahead.
Thanks so much for taking the time. It was I know it was a little bit of a back and forth for a little bit, but happy we're able to kind of do it. It's unfortunate that it was on a night where we should be either at the arena or watching it from home. Love to have you back when you're more settled and you've seen a bunch more games.
Sure, sounds good.
And we'll rehash whatever article you have going on at the time.
Okay, perfect, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks a lot.
Kev.
Thanks again to Kevin Kurz. Super nice guys. We mentioned great conversation. Loved his insight on the team that, you can only be new for so long.
Yeah.
I said that when I start jobs. Hopefully I don't have to do that again very soon, but for his sake, that third party perspective on the team was really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that he kept reiterating, like, I want to see them a little bit more.
I felt bad that he's kind of early, right?
Yeah, but it's fair, right? And he wasn't trying to make an assessment on something he didn't really know about, which is completely fair for him to do. Because like he said, I haven't been here that long. I would like to, be at a few more games. I think was he only at one? I think
he was only at one. He's covered more than that, but I don't think he's been at the arena.
Right. So completely fair, because
only the one time.
You see different things on the TV than you do in the press box. So
he hasn't been able to get those relationships.
Yeah,
with the folks around the team and on the team, and that's definitely difficult.
So I'm excited for him to be on board, because he did say, I'm not afraid to be critical. And I don't think Staple was afraid to be critical, but it seems like Kurz is a little more open to it.
So I think it's just going to be a different voice.
Yeah.
Right? And Staple was around for a really long time with this team.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely exciting. And it was a little, I think, and maybe you felt this way too, like a little validated by that perspective from outside of the organization, where, especially in his latest article, that he was comparing, or he mentioned how the Hurricanes kind of came back. They made it to the conference final.
Yeah.
I said the same thing about the Lightning.
Yeah.
He mentioned San Jose does the same thing. Between those 3 teams, the Islanders kind of fall into that. That's what's kind of giving me this optimism. Like, they can still have this good season, right?
Yeah.
And they can kind of finish strong. And then the next year, they can kind of come back and figure some stuff out. I think in the meantime is where you're like, how do we look at this? Can we continue to shift lenses, trade this and assets here and Varlamov and this kind of thing, as we discussed. Like, it gets confusing and it gets a little tough to continue to wade through all of that. And I think from where we sit too, when we got to talk about the team and pick up these things, it makes it really difficult.
Yeah.
But really happy Kurz on board. Excited to kind of get his continued perspective on all of that. Any last words there?
No, that's really it. I'm excited to see more of his work as the time goes on. Excited to get to know him a little bit more, and that's really it. I missed this. Felt like it was a lifetime.
Yeah, I took last week off on purpose. Like, I wasn't going to do it, but then it still felt like a really long time.
It did.
I think we're also like a day later in the week. So that kind of throws some things off. So
yeah,
we appreciate your patience as we kind of like bob and weave through all.
We're trying to get Kurz. He's still settling in and stuff. So
that was a long time coming, and then the news, it didn't really make sense for us to do it the other night because I wasn't sure what the media availability would be
Right.
today. And that's been the real struggle with this and writing and everything else.
Yeah,
Was you
definitely.
write something and it's immediately irrelevant.
Yeah.
Or we post something and it's immediately irrelevant. And we don't have the time to do multiple episodes every single week as much as we'd like to do that.
Right.
Although maybe we need to start doing shorter ones. Let us know if that's something you want, a quick 20 minutes after something. The post games are tough because it's late and we're doing, James, you're still working with our partners over at Isles Fix. So it's complicated. We're both really busy in and outside the show.
Yes, sir.
But all right. So thank you to DraftKings and Manscaped. Use that THPN promo code with DraftKings and NHP20 with Manscaped. Hope everyone was able to kind of snag a gift for yourself or a loved one. Seeing people of all genders with the Manscaped, and I think that's really cool. I'm waiting to see some of their advertisements moving forward and some of the ad reads to kind of incorporate that. It's definitely awesome. So thanks to the Hockey Podcast Network and to Isles Fix. And of course, all of you for your patience as you've waited for us to kind of come back from this postponement break and all of this. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to the show or watch it. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassman Hockey. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube. You can also join our Discord for a safe space to chat with fellow Islander fans. Thank you to our mods who have kind of been putting that together and keeping it going. Lastly, you can find James's work at the Fourth Period and my work at Hockey Writers. You can also find James at Alice Fix. Until next time, well, let's go Islanders.